According to IEEE, the top programming languages of 2022 are SQL, Java, Python, JavaScript, C#, C, C++, HTML, and so on. There are literally hundreds of programs out there. Many of them are obscure languages or relatively obsolete languages, but in reality, there are roughly 25 languages out there today that are in demand and pay well. So if you are new to programming, which language should you learn first? I think I can help. Hello, my name is Daryl, and this is Programming in Any Language. I call this Programming in Any Language because if you can program in one language, you can program in another one very easily. Basically, all programming languages are the same. They all take our commands and convert them into a set of ones and zeros for the computer to execute. And all these languages are the same? Pretty much. It's sort of like learning how to drive a Ford Mustang or a Toyota Corolla. Once you learn the basics, you can pretty much get into any automobile and guide it to the right direction. Other controls might be a little different as you move from car to car, but they're pretty much the same. That's what it's like to move from, say, Python to Java. It's a little different, but basically the logic is the same. The syntax is a bit different. Even the supposedly more difficult programs like C++ might be like moving from a Ford Mustang to an RV or a bus, or even a large truck. A little more skill is needed here, but basically the logic is still the same. Move forward, watch out for traffic. Will you make mistakes? Of course. No program is written error-free. Errors are what help you make the program better. In the case of the programs, watch out for what the user does. You never know how your program is going to be used, and you need to plan for that. In driving, expect the unexpected. In programming, expect the unexpected. So, what do we need? Well, we need a programming language, we need an IDE, we need a compiler. Let's start with the IDE. What is an IDE? IDE is short for Integrated Development Environment. It's nothing more than a place to type out your commands. You can use something as simple as Notepad to write your programs. This is Notepad. It can be used to write programs. I'm going to do one real quickly here using static system. Give it a class, call it a hello program. We'll put in a brace to surround our class, and we'll say, give it a little indentation here, just so we can tell the difference here. And we're going to have this do something now. I'll put the static void main is going to do something. I'll need braces around it, so we'll do a right line here. We'll say hello world, give a little exclamation point, put a little quote around it, and end this thing with a parentheses, hit semicolon, and go down and close this brace, and then close this brace, and then save the program somewhere. This happens to be written in C#. You wouldn't necessarily know that by looking at the language here, but I'll save it as, and we'll go out with someplace to do it. Let's just have a dummy folder here someplace. Let's just call that, and we'll name it, actually, hello world.cs for C#, and then actually, yeah, we'll just save it like that. I don't want to save it as a text file at all. And save, and bang, it's been saved. So that's it. That actually, I can use Notepad to actually write programs. The problem with Notepad is that you need to know quite a bit about what is needed in the language to actually write the program. Braces, why do you need them? Where do they go? What is system.console? Notepad provides no help whatsoever. It is simply a blank slate where you can write code, but you need to know your language intimately. Few people do. Most languages have an integrated development environment or IDE associated with them that either comes with the language when you download it or you download it as a separate download. Let's take a look at IDLE. This is IDLE. It looks a little like Notepad. It allows us to write programs in Python. And I'm going to do one real quickly here. I'm just going to do a files. Open new file here, and it's going to give me a new window. I can close this one off now. And I've got myself a simple, looks like Notepad here, and I'm going to do a little hello world thing here. I'm just going to do a print, and I'm going to do a couple things like this. Hello world, and give it an exclamation point, and end it like that, and we've got pretty much got our program there. That's our program. Let's try and run it real quickly. We'll do a run on this thing, and we'll do a run module. And I want to save it. Yeah, I like to save it first, so we'll go ahead and save it someplace. We're going to save it out in that same area that I had this dummy2 thing. And here's a Hello World Python already. We're just going to add another one out to it. Hello. There's a couple of them out there, as you can see. I'll just do a hello world. It's going to overwrite the py one you see down below. This is py for Python. This is for C#. And we're just going to give it hello world. It's going to grab a py on it and override that one. I'm going to replace this one. And there it goes. It reruns it. And we're going to run it. And it just ran. It executed the program. We get hello world to pop out here. So this thing does some nice work for you. It kind of helps you along. If you happen to capitalize this print here and put it in like this. Will it work yet? Very likely. We'll save it again. This time we'll save it on top of this one. Actually, it's got an error because it doesn't understand the word print. So this is giving us some help. It's telling us that print needs to be capitalized. Or does not need to be, should not be capitalized here. So it actually is giving us some assistance. Notepad wouldn't do that. Notepad wouldn't do that, but IDLE does. It gives us some help in knowing the language. It knows how to handle things. So we just change that again to a small p, run our module again, go ahead and let it save it, and there it is. Hello world works fine. So that's the way you program using the IDE, the Integrated Development Environment, in Python called IDLE. Nice and simple. So you can see that IDLE provides some help when writing your Python programs. In fact, it provides quite a bit of help. It knows the syntax of the language and points out your mistakes as you make them. Java too has an IDE to help you develop your code. In fact, it has several IDEs. One popular one is called NetBeans. You would download this separately. Another is an IDE called Eclipse. Let's take a look and see how this one works. This is Eclipse. Double click on it. It's the integrated development environment for Java, or one of them. And I'm going to take a default folder right here and launch it into this particular folder. It's going to create my application right inside this folder. And I'll be able to simply go in here and create a brand new Java project. And I'm going to call this thing Hello World. And hit finish. That's going to start me up here. I'm going to say don't create on this module name. And now I'm going to go ahead and create a class. I need a class for it. So I'm going to create a brand new class. It's going to come up. I'm going to call it Hello World. And I'm going to identify that I want a main in this routine. So it's actually going to execute that first. That's about all I need to do here. It'll bring this thing up, establish my folder. No, it's just like Notepad. Again, we have this this beginning, but it's got a lot of stuff that's actually added in here. It give me a package, it give me the class, and it's allowing me to write the code right in here, and that's exactly where I'm going to do it. I'm going to basically tab to this area right here, and tab in, and start writing my code. I'm just going to say system.out.println. Oops. Got to spell it right. Yeah. Notice this was giving me errors when I didn't understand what I was actually dealing with. P-R-I-N-T-L-Y is not going to do is L-N, so it tells me I have an error there. I then can go my parentheses and apostrophe and say hello world. Pop it in there and end the sentence with a semicolon. Notice it it helped me along quite a bit as I was going through this thing, and that's it. I can save this right now. I'll just save it, and I'm going to run it. So I'm going to go ahead and do a run right here, and it's do the run, and down here it says hello world. It actually ran the program and did it. So I compiled it and ran it. So very straightforward. Once again, this is another integrated development environment that can help you tons. As you just saw, Eclipse 2 was a very useful IDE for entering your program code. It catches syntax errors. It allows you to run and test your program. In fact, if you are writing Java programs, you really can't do without it, unless you're using NetBeans, which is a similar IDE. Use one of them. All the IDEs we looked at so far are add-ons. They are applications you would download to make your program life easier. If we switch back to C#, we'll find out that downloading C#, you are also downloading a number of other Microsoft languages, including C++, J#, and others in a collection called Microsoft Visual Studios. Visual Studio is a collection of all Microsoft's languages, and it includes its own IDE. Take a look. This is the Visual Studio IDE. It looks a little intimidating, I think, as you look at this, first of all. That's because it's actually using a GUI, a graphic user interface. And we're going to create a quick program on this thing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add a button on here. And inside this button, I'm going to write my code. So I'm actually creating this thing right here. And I won't do anything special with it, but I'm going to click on it right. I'll have to put a label out there too. And I'll do that. And I'll make that label sit right here. And just leave it at that. And I'm going to double click on this button, and it's going to open up a code window for me. So basically, this IDE, like all of the others we've seen so far, basically writes a lot of the code for you. And now what I can actually do is I can write my program, and all I'm really doing is adding some more code to something that's already been created. And I'm going to do it to label 1, and I'm going to put in a text area right here, and I'm going to say is equal to hello world. And I'm going to put a semicolon on the end of this thing too. In this case, I can literally run the program from here, and it's going to put hello world in a label someplace on my machine. We'll take a look at this. We'll run it real quickly, and we'll bring it up, and here's my program running. Notice it's actually a program. It's got a button and a label on it. Nothing fancy. I'll click on the button, and hello world pops up here. So this is another tool you can use to create programs. Visual Studio by far looks like the most complex of all the IDEs we've looked at. And it is, because it not only gives you the code window to write your application, but also gives you access to the GUI, or graphical user interface world. The other language we've looked at also can help you write programs that include the graphical user interface, but that's another application you need to add onto your IDE. Visual Studio includes them all in one. There's a plus and a minus to this. In the other languages, you end up learning the language first. Once you've got that done, you then learn how to wrap the GUI objects around your code and make your programs look modern. That's good. You are learning one thing at a time. But it's also a little boring. With Visual Studio in the mix, you can learn the programming language at the same time you are learning how to write GUI programs. I think this approach is a little more satisfying to the new programmer. Everything you do looks current, but no matter which approach you take, you can see that there is more to learning a language than the language itself. You also need to learn the tools that will help you use your language. Well, a while back, I said we need a programming language, we need an IDE, we need a compiler. We now know what the IDE is. The compiler, that's something that takes your code you've written in the IDE and converts it to a machine language. All ones and zeros. That's the language of the computer. The compiler comes with your language. There's nothing special you need to do. Depending upon the IDE you are using, there's generally a run button or a compile button on there that you can easily find. If you happen to be using Notepad, that's a little more complicated. I'll show you that in the next video. Lastly, there is the programming language. This is something typically you'll download from an internet site and install on your computer. This too we'll look at in detail in the next video. So to wrap this all up, learning a programming language is really about learning the tools to write your program and then learning the syntax of the specific language you are working with. And all programming languages are essentially the same. In the next video, we'll get the language and the IDE and set it up on our computer. Until then, Take care, and I'll see you next time.